Today we're going to talk about two basic formats of a table. Over here we have a table in a very traditional format. We call this format as a tabular format. On the left hand side is very popular as well. We call it pivot format. You can see I draw some lines in between the data. For this pivot format, I have a cross line. For this tabular format, I have only one. That's because the mechanism of this table is different from this one. Your data is actually expanded by going downwards. This kind of table, if you want to include more data, for example, if you want to include another person's score for different subjects, you need to go into add data over here and also go into here to add more subjects. So the way you refill the data is different. This will be the stage one of the table. This one can be easily replicated as long as you have this format. Now we're talking about a very important concept. When you try to design a template or something else, you try to collect the information, and that kind of collection behavior can happen on a very regular routine, which means you can add a new record at a certain interval, and later on do analysis. You better have your data collection stage in this tabular format because it's pretty simple to drop things. For example, you have a new in your class, the name is Jess, and you want record a new subject for her. You want to say a music, and then the score is 80. Now you're data entering, but if in this format, you want to add the same record. Okay, jazz, and then I'm going to go into music, which is 80. I will leave this kind of things blank. And next time when you have another person you need to add, and if they don't have the score for music, you're going to skip this cell and fulfill, say, these two cells. So your data entering and data collection process is not consistent. While in this format, you're just going down to fulfill your task. In this format, you need to think about, oh, what I'm missing. So when you design a template to try to collect the information, and it's also involving some data entering process, you better have your table or template designed in a way that going down. Because this is the natural and the one and only format, everything will going down. We call each line is one observation. Each column is an attribute. Data was presented in this row and column format. Each row is an independent observation, which means this line has no interaction with this line. There's no such connection between them. So when you try to add new records, you're always going down. You seldomly expand the attributes. If you have a different attribute, you're going to have other dimensions to describe this one observation. For example, you may have a new column, say gender. If we insert a new column, gender, right? Once you have this column, you describe this line with one more dimension. You're expanding the horizon of this table. When you try to design template to collect the information, you better have your data in this kind of format. If I'm going to collect my information in such a format, but how I'm going to replicate in this, as long as you have them in this kind of very nice, neat tabular format, to summarize things in this format in multiple ways, we can do the very manual way. So what you're going to do is you copy the row and column of the variables you try to describe. So you copy the math, the paste. Now you have this ready. You're going to select this whole thing. Then you're going to do sum ifs. You summarize your information by two criteria or two variables. So first we're going to say summarize range. We're going to sum everything over here. We're going to lock that. So we click F1, F4. Once we lock that, we are passing through the first criteria. First criteria range is, let's just say the name range. We're going to click F4 to lock this because every cell is going to look after this name column, F4 to lock it. And in this one, I'm going to actually only look at the criteria, which is from the name column, right? So I'm going to select this one. But doing this one, when this form moving from B this row to B this row, is going to make it dynamics, right? So somehow I need to lock this A11, but I'm going to only lock A column, not 11. So 11, you can move up and down, 12, 13, no matter how far it goes, that's totally fine. But I just need to lock A. So F4, the first time is wrong. We need to lock just A. And then when going to the criteria range 2, which is the subject, Since every cell in this formula range is going to look at the same subject column G, so I'm going to F4 to lock everything. Then criteria 2 is from the map. I click map. Think about which row and which column I'm going to lock. I'm going to lock the whole row rather than the column B. Cool. That's done. Click back and Control Enter. Now let's have a look. This is the formula we've written down since we're using the group entering, which is Control Enter. So it has fulfilled all the cells in this data range. And the average is 67.6. If I select the same range, 67.6, and I can have a random check. Each cell is actually matching that. I have successfully replicated this pivot format information based on my tabular data input. This is the manual way, but you have other tools to transform your data into this pivot format by using this beautiful, tidy tabular format. So you can select the cell, select anywhere in the data, or you can select everything. And then we're going to insert pivot table. In the pivot table, I'm going to OK to conform to this data range. But now I'm not going to use a new worksheet. I'm going to use the existing one. Here, I'm going to choose just here. Then I'm going down, click OK. Once I have that, if I make this screen smaller, you can see this is the pivot table area, right? So what I need to do is I just need to have the name as a row. And also I need the subject as a column. And the value area, I'm going to put the score. Now you can see I have replicated this format. I can make it exactly the same by going to this contextual toolbar. Sorry, I just go into here and let's just disable this field list. Then we go into the design. In the design, I don't want subtotal. I don't even want a grand total because in our original view, I don't have that. So off. Now I have this, right? And then I'm thinking maybe the format is a little bit off. I choose more. I just choose this one. So now I almost replicate what I have done over here. And if I just right click here, make a change about this option because I don't want the layout to be automatically fit with. Click OK. Now I can make my cell very identical. Okay. So you can see, as long as I have this tabular format data, I can use either formula to summarize them into a pivot format, or I can simply just use the pivot table, insert the pivot table. That easy to have this pivot format ready. So you can tell by this process that this is the mother of any formation you try to do later on. Because later on you may think about, you don't want this 3, you don't say a total. That's why you need to have total column over here. We just need to go into this pivot table, go into design tab, just enable that for row or columns. Now we have the column. And we do this one as well. Now we have the summarization for the rows. And if I don't like this, I can change this as count, average, min, max, product, do whatever I want. Be sure if your template is designed for data collection purpose, make sure they're in this tabular format. So you can view your data easily just by going down. You can even do it further by introduce data validation in this whole column. So people cannot mess around what they can put for the subject. And you can also validate the name. For the score, you just need to make sure the data input is reasonable range. For example, 0 to 100, if that's the benchmark you try to set up. After you realize that this format is better for data collection, now we're coming back to this pivot format. Pivot format is really superior because nobody wants to look at this kind of granularity to have something summarized. There's nothing I can summarize. By looking at this number, I have no idea what is going on for Tony, what is going on for Tia, what is going on between Rob and Jessica. But here in this pivot format, I can easily tell if Jessica performed better than Rob. I can see by every subject, Jessica is better than Rob from math, science, and music perspective. And also, if you go into here, we can right click to summarize the information into different ways, say max or min. And in that way, you can have more things, more insights found out for your stakeholders. The pivot table is really powerful. Even you transform your tabular format into a pivot format by using the pivot table, you can still have this format, which is going to here, pivot. Once we enable this field list, we can do little things. We can just do subject after name, do score after subject. And next we need to do is going to this design. We're not going to do this default layout. We're going to use tabular form. And we're going to remove the subtotal. And also going to report layout. We're going to report all label item. Now if I drag this up a little bit, I can see this table is somehow replicate this tabular format. That's because when we design this table, we're using the tabular form rather than a compact. We can see once you have everything in this kind of form, you can transform into a very usable form. One form is this pivot form, or people don't like it, that's totally fine. You can replicate what has been done in this kind of tabular and then transform, because in this form, you can have bad play with that. If I click this pivot table, I can insert some very interesting things. For example, I can introduce a slicer, say name, click OK. Once I have this name is like a filter. If I click Jessica, I'm going to only see the Jessica's records. If I just use my mouse, click and hold and drag, I can select multiple persons. I can even introduce a subject as a slicer. I can even adjust these slicers. So think about from the output or stakeholder perspective. What do you try to make and make them easier to find out the thing? So that's everything for today. See you guys in the next one.